Advisory. Some episodes of the 1836 podcast are not intended for all audiences, due to details that might be considered disturbing. Listener and viewer discretion is advised.
Hello, I'm Nathan Rogers.
And I'm Joe Batterton.
This
Welcome
is 1836.
to 1836.
On episode 15 of the 1836 podcast, we talk about the ghost town of Rush, Arkansas.
We said it together.
We did. So do we have a Ozark hillbilly type term or word for this week?
Yes, I believe we do. And it's not just mine, it's yourn too. The word yorn.
Yorn.
It'd be like a yor with an N on the end of it.
Like this
which means exactly
mine,
what
it's yorn.
It's right. It sounds exactly like what it says. So a lot of old folks use that term a lot. And I don't know, I need to look into some of those words because I know that a lot of those words that you hear spoken out there are used to, not as much anymore, kind of had roots in Elizabethan English. I think I said that right. Old English. So a lot of that Old English language, and just like anything, when you get into isolated areas, what you brought with you kind of sticks sometimes. Where if you're in a more populated area where there's a lot of people coming and going, things like that will change a whole lot quicker. So I understand how a lot of old words stick around in the Ozarks and Appalachia. So
yeah, a lot of the words that we use today that came from our great-grandparents, great-great-great-grandparents have a little Irish and Scottish content to it.
My great-grandma used to use the word kippens, I believe was the word, and it was baby diapers. And I think that's a German-rooted term. I don't know if it's I don't know what the word exactly means, what the actual word means, but that's what it was. It's I've asked around a little bit, but I'd never heard anybody else ever use that term before. But her mom was, their family was Austrian, German, Dutch, or whatever you want to call it. So anyway, yorn. It's not just mine; it's yorn also.
Yeah. Tyler Childers has a hit. I'm all yorn, you're all mine.
That's right. So there you go. There's somebody who comes from the Appalachian Mountains, however you want to say that, and I know that I've listened to his music too, and you hear a lot of that terminology, which I think is kind of cool that he's held on to some of that and helped kind of
passes it down in his music.
Yeah.
One of my favorite artists. So let's talk about Rush, Arkansas.
During the early 1800s, French prospectors ventured from Louisiana to explore the Rush area. Subsequently, in the 1880s, Euro-American settlers began to arrive slowly, drawn by the allure of the region. This gradual influx was influenced by the area's limited infrastructure at the time. Some sought lost silver mines based on Indian legends and discovered shiny metallic flakes, believed to be silver concentrated in the rocks. The initial prospectors, including John Wolfer, Bob Stultzer, and J.W. McCabe, were drawn by the promise of silver from these legends. The uncovering of zinc on Rush Mountain and the subsequent establishment of the Morning Star Mine in 1885 spurred the development of new mines, a smelter, and various industries. News of this discovery quickly spread throughout the Mid-South, capturing the attention of individuals from distant places who turned their gaze to the hills of Arkansas, particularly the mineral-rich areas near the Buffalo and White Rivers. In 1886, a rock smelter was erected along Rush Creek to extract silver from zinc ore. However, the scarcity of silver rendered the smelter obsolete, and a test run in January 1887 produced impressive green zinc oxide fumes without the expected silver collecting in the sand molds. Faced with this setback, disheartened prospectors offered to trade their prospect, along with the smelter, for a modest box of canned oysters valued at $2.50. Regrettably, their proposal was declined.
What a rush. And that's
people rushed here and they rushed out not too long after.
They did. And so for those of you who don't know, in the little county that we live in lies a wonderful, cool, very unusual ghost town by the name of Rush, Arkansas.
It's not the ghost you think of, though.
No, it's just a deserted old town.
Some people like to play off that if you read stuff online, but it's not.
I've been down there a lot. I've never seen any spooks. Not looked real hard, but
no haints.
There's probably some down there. No haints.
So I read the French French prospectors from Louisiana explored this area in the 1800s. I don't know if they had some sort of journal or log of places they visited, but allegedly in the 1800s, early 1800s, French explorers from Louisiana was up in this area.
Looking for minerals, right? Looking for gold, silver, anything that they could exploit.
Yeah, a little bit of whatever they could find. But later came folks looking for silver from folklore, legends, stories that they heard that there were supposed to be some silver mines up here, which, you know.
And granted, what they mine out of those mines is silver in color.
Right. We've read a lot where there's, you know, legends of Indian stories and tales where there were silver mines here, and maybe, like you just said, the Indians here thought it was silver, but actually it was just zinc.
Well, you know, if you didn't have any proper way of testing something like that, and you just saw it there, because there was veins of zinc that were exposed, and it is silver in color. I grew up close to a zinc mine, and there was a rock out in the middle of this creek that we used to play in, and it had just a kind of a what you think of as like the mother lode, you know, that vein of ore. It was real narrow, but it was zinc, and we used to try to chip that stuff out and take it to school and show the teachers and the kids because it was kind of cool. But yeah, you know, when you first see it, you think that it looks like gold, you know, or silver. It's shiny and metallic. And
so I'm going to go off another rabbit hole here. It has nothing to do with Rush, but it does have something to do with zinc and silver. Always heard legend of the Oakham Dollar. Supposedly there was a silver mine up in this area, and that's where they mined their silver and made their Oakham Dollar. I believe it's highly possible that it was not silver. It could have been zinc.
I think it's a good hypothesis. Like you said, if they weren't knowledgeable about the metallurgy or whatever,
it was just shiny and silver looking.
Yeah, it's shiny and silver, and they knew it was metallic and it was in the ground, and that's a possibility. That's a good play on that legend. I think the Oakham Dollar, the elusive Oakham Dollar.
So in 1885, they unexpectedly discovered zinc down in Rush. Thought it was silver. It led to some folks coming into the area and starting the mining industry. I believe Morning Star Mine was one of the first and most influential mines. And then they built a smelter in 1886. And once they ran this stuff through the smelter, it started smoking different colors and like green fumes and things like that, and realized pretty quick it wasn't silver, it was zinc. They were pretty disappointed in their discovery.
So it didn't smelt like silver.
He smelt her and it didn't smell like silver. Then, disappointed in their lack of silver, some of the first prospectors here, I'm not familiar with these names, but I found out was John Wolfer, Bob Stolzer, and J.W. McCabe. And these three, including these three, wanted to sell their land and prospects, disappointing that it wasn't silver. And they were offered, they wanted to trade for like a can of oysters valued at $2.50 is what I read. And the proposal was declined. They got denied. So that's kind of how Rush, the first folks of Rush and their huge zinc discovery went. A little disappointment.
So a little bit more about Rush. Most of it was in private hands for the longest time until the Park Service started buying up land down the river. And Rush is one of the places that was brought into the national park system as part of the Buffalo National River. And so anybody can go down and visit our little ghost town down there, and it's a really cool place to go down and check out. There's still a lot of houses down there, a few old stores, and one old store, a few foundations of some other stores. There's a smelter that's still down there. There's a few of the mine buildings are up there. All the old mines are still there, obviously. A lot of the mine buildings are gone, but you can see foundations. There's steam engine skeletons, back up in the woods. There's equipment and just scrap iron all over the place. You can't really see it because nature's kind of taken back over. But if you get out there and walk around a little bit, you see it. But it's a really narrow hollow, and it probably runs maybe a mile and a half from where you first turn on the road to where the creek comes into where Rush Creek comes into the Buffalo River down there. Yeah. And at one point they said, was it 22,000 people?
Up to
one of the estimations.
Yeah, we're getting to the boom right now, but yeah, it's hard to imagine this little area you just described. You just have to see it to know.
Yeah, you go down there and it's this deep, dark hollow, that classic Ozarks deep, dark hollow, literally. And you got trees and steep hills on both sides, beautiful creek, spring fed, running right down the middle of it. And it's pretty narrow. And the thought of 22,000 people living, which I know they didn't live just in that one holler. There was Clabber Creek holler on the next, just right around the bend on the other side of the mountain there. But still, you get around, hike around up in there, and it's just hard to fathom that many people, not only just being there, but living there. And I know it was probably tent cities and, tar paper shacks and little log cabins and stuff like that. But that's crazy. One of the things I read is that at one point, it may have been just for a week or so, Rush, population-wise, was like the second largest city in Arkansas for a little bit. And it was a boom town. It was there were stores. I'm sure there was. I would venture to say there were brothels and probably bars and all kinds of places to take the money and put it toward bad habits.
Yeah. So discovering zinc instead of silver wasn't necessarily a bad thing, and they. In 1889, once they discovered it was zinc, a couple guys formed a company, and then they started taking the zinc out of the Morningstar mine. And then right around World War I, there was a huge need for zinc. And little old Rush, Arkansas is responsible for helping the entire country during World War I because they were making weaponry and ammunition and things like that, supplying to our troops. We, before that, I guess, had to rely on other countries or somewhere else to get that stuff. But during this time, we relied on places like Rush. And like Joe said, there were up to 22,000 people that lived here at this time.
The discovery of zinc, instead of silver, proved to be a significant development. However, due to the challenging terrain and limited access, no substantial action was taken until 1889. In that year, a group of men from Arkansas and Tennessee formed a company, opened up the lodes, and cut a road connecting to the highway leading to Yellville. This initiative resulted in the extraction of thousands of dollars worth of zinc from the Morningstar mine. The mining boom in Rush thrived throughout the 1890s. As the demand for higher quality zinc intensified during World War I, immense concentrating plants, machinery and equipment embarked on a challenging journey to Rush. The completion of the Missouri Pacific Railroad route up the White River to Cotter, and across the mountains to Kansas City, facilitated the transportation of mining equipment to Summit, just north of Yellville. In 1893, a substantial chunk of zinc, weighing nearly 13,000 pounds, was extracted from the Morningstar mine. This extraordinary specimen, known as Jumbo, was showcased at the World's Fair Columbian Exposition in Chicago, where it earned the prestigious first award premium. The transportation of this significant mass of zinc was a logistical feat, involving a logging wagon drawn by 16 oxen to move it from the mine to the Buffalo River. Subsequently, it was floated down the Buffalo River to the White River, where it underwent a transfer to a steamboat bound for Batesville. In Batesville, it was further moved to a railroad car for transportation to Chicago. Adding to its acclaim, Zinc ore from the Morning Star mine secured another top honor at the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904. It has been exhibited at various museums including the Smithsonian Institute. By the middle of 1914, substantial production began the return trip from Rush to the smelters. This marked the onset of a significant influx of people to Rush. The town rapidly expanded, becoming the largest in Marion County and the second largest in the state of Arkansas. During its heyday in World War I, Rush boasted various amenities, including pool halls, hotels, a hardware store, a pharmacy, restaurants, barbershops, a post office, bakeries, and a telephone exchange serving 165 phones. The population surged to an impressive 22,000 people. The Rush mines played a central role in the zinc industry not only in Arkansas but also in America during World War I. 10 mining companies operated 13 developed mines within the district, contributing to the production of weaponry and ammunition for the war effort. The operations, marked by huge oil engines running the mills, disrupted the mountain's serenity for miles around, and a continuous parade of wagons from the valley became a common sight. In adverse weather conditions, 3 mule teams were essential to move tons from the camp to summit. In 1916, documents were filed incorporating Rush into a city, earning recognition as the most prosperous city per capita in Arkansas. The early days of Rush were characterized by the rapid growth of tents in the morning, makeshift shelters from rocks or packing boxes, and a bustling community adapting to the elements of nature.
That's crazy.
Yeah, there's what's the population of Belleville?
About 1,200?
Yeah, so
I think maybe 1,300.
Like double the size of our current county seat in this county. So yeah, it's
in this little holler.
Yeah, and down in this little holler, and that little holler was responsible for helping to defeat the Kaiser. So
yeah, they had pool halls, hotels, commercial district, barbershops.
I'm sure they had brothels. I know there were brothels there.
Probably brothels. In 1916, it was incorporated as an actual city.
Wow. So there was a city hall, I'm sure, and
yeah, I
know there was hotels.
Courthouse. I don't know if it was an actual county seat courthouse, but there could have been
it was probably like a city hall type
things like that.
Yeah.
Makes you wonder if they had their own law enforcement. I don't know. I haven't read that, but if they had up their own post office and their own courthouse, they possibly had their own constable or something like that there.
Well, there was I don't think the train ran all the way up there, but there was a train that ran
got
the
pretty
river
close
to get close, wasn't it, to help take ore down, to make it easier to ship out. So yeah, it's pretty interesting. And like I said, if you just have a chance to hike around down there and go up by some of those mines and just look at some of the equipment that's still strode around out in there, and that's not even the tip of the iceberg of what was down in there. And it was I'm sure it was loud and noisy and just people going everywhere and mules and wagons and
a hardware store, a pharmacy, restaurants, bakeries. And I also read where there was at one time 165 phone lines.
Wow.
That was pretty rare back then to have one phone, let alone 165.
Yeah, it's hard for me to, because we are kind of and I don't mean this in a bad way at all, but we're kind of a backwoods community, so to speak, and we've got a couple of major highways running through the county, but we're pretty isolated for the most part. There's no major cities in our county, and we're pretty rural, and that's what I meant by backwoods. But it's hard to imagine that kind of commerce and just hustle and bustle going on back down in there, because that's down at the beginning of the Buffalo Wilderness area down there. So to us and everybody who visits this area, when you get down to Rush, you're entering what little wilderness is left in Arkansas is starting right there. And at one time, that was like one of the biggest population cities in the state. It's crazy how things can change and how nature can kind of absorb all that stuff back in, and you wouldn't even hardly know that anybody had been down in there before.
Another fun fact, you mentioned how the zinc kind of runs in veins and things like that. In 1893, they found a 13,000 pound big chunk of zinc, and they called it jumbo.
Jumbo is actually still in the Guinness Book of World Records, and is the biggest, zinc nugget or whatever you want
I
to
think
call it.
so. And to get jumbo out and transport it, it took 16 oxen to move it from the mine to the river, and then it floated down the Buffalo to the White River by steamboat to Batesville. And once it got to Batesville, they took it from by railroad to Chicago, and made the St. Louis World's Fair in 1904, and even ended up in the Smithsonian Institute. So that's pretty cool.
I bet it's in. Have you ever watched Indiana Jones and that first movie where they go into that big warehouse and there's all those artifacts, and that's probably where Jumbo is.
Could be.
It's sitting right next to the Ark of the Covenant. So, zinc. Do you know what zinc is used for? Besides putting on your nose to keep from getting a sunburn, that's zinc oxide, I think. I know they use zinc in making like galvanized roofing. That galvanized coating on there is made out of zinc. I know that pewter has usually got a pretty good zinc content in it, I think.
Wait, computers have?
I know they're.
I'm just kidding.
Go ahead. But I'm not sure everything that they used it for in the war effort, but I know it wasn't a necessity. Bauxite's another thing. You know, the little town of Bauxite, Arkansas. Not trying to jump ship, but it's kind of similar. I think bauxite's used. Don't quote me and don't write anything bad back to me if I get this wrong, but I think bauxite's used in processing aluminum, maybe. But there's only a few places that you can get bauxite in the United States, and Bauxite, Arkansas is one of them. But similar. I mean, I don't know how much of a boom town that was there, but Zinc definitely was a boom town that turned into a ghost town.
In 1919, the prosperity of Rush came to an abrupt end, and zinc production experienced a significant drop. By 1920, the town's population dwindled to a few hundred residents, and by 1931, the last remaining Morning Star mine closed its operations. The aftermath of World War I, coupled with a recession, led to a swift decline in the demand and price for zinc, triggering the erosion of Rush's population. The downturn continued into World War II, during which several processing mills were dismantled for salvage. This domino effect extended to the mines, eventually culminating in the closure of the post office in the mid-1950s, marking a pivotal moment in Rush's loss of identity. In the 1960s, the exodus of residents continued gradually, and by 1972, Congress designated the area as Buffalo National River, encompassing what is now recognized as the Rush Historic District. The National Park Service undertook road improvements, stabilized structures, and erected fences at the mines and tunnels during the 1980s. Despite the challenges posed by flooding and arson over the years, remnants of the once prosperous zinc mining town persist, offering a poignant display of abandoned structures and a zero population. The remaining structures, including the iconic Morning Star Hotel and Mill, and the site of the Hicks Hotel and Hicks General Store, bear witness to the town's bygone era. Though the integrity of these structures has somewhat diminished due to deterioration and overgrowth, they effectively convey the identity of Rush as a deserted mining community. Added to the National Register of Historic Places in 1987, the town has been safeguarded from demolition, preserving its historical significance. The enduring presence of the 1882 smelter stands as a testament to the town's rich history.
So after the war was over with, and before, obviously way before World War II, the need for the zinc that they could produce in there, and the cost ratio, I'm sure, was a big detriment to
I think there were 13 mining companies there at one time.
Yeah. If you ever looked at in this whole county, I mean, zinc is found all over the place in Arkansas, but there's concentrations in our county. There was zinc mines all over the county. As a matter of fact, right here on my property, just down the hill from my house, there was a small zinc mine down there. I don't know how long it operated, but it was on the map though, and I know there's some up around your house I've seen on the little zinc mine map. But But anyway, after the war was over with, and it just kind of died out, but people still lived down in that area for years.
Plus the recession hit, and that drove a lot of people out. By World War II, pretty much everything had been dismantled, and post office closed down in the mid 1950s.
I think the Morningstar Mine building was down there until the 60s, I think. I've seen pictures of it later on, but it was abandoned.
And in the 60s, people started moving out. In 1972, you alluded to earlier, Congress designated Rush as an area in the Buffalo River. And in the 1980s, the National Park Service started making improvements to the roads, the structures, and built fences around the buildings and some of the mines.
Yeah, they usually won't do a whole lot to restore those buildings that are like that, but I did notice the last couple of times I was down there that there was a couple of the buildings that were that they shored up because they were starting to kind of lean and were falling into disrepair, which is good. I mean, I hate to see that. That's part of our history.
Yeah, unfortunately,
you hate to see those buildings just go away.
Committed arson down there a couple of years ago and burnt some of them down. I don't know why anybody would want to do that, but
there was a large barn down there, just down from where that smelter is, and I know that somebody set that on fire back probably about the time I moved here about 20 years ago.
Yeah, and of course the weather. We have bad weather here in the Ozarks, so you see modern houses getting damaged from storms and things like that, and some of these places that were built in the early 1900s, late 1800s, it faces those challenges as well.
Yeah, so it's like I said, it's a really interesting place to go. There's a nice little campground down there. There's a boat launch. That's one of our go-to floats when me and my wife Sheila go floating. A lot of times we'll float from the bridge on Highway 14, Dillard's Ferry, and go down to Rush and pull out down there. So I've been down there in the ghost town a lot and hiked around, and it's one of my favorite places around here just to go and explore. But I know even up into the 50s and 60s there was that one of the little stores down there stayed open, and I know that I should have got the name. I've got pictures of them down there, but there's a little store down there, and they used to do the ghost town tours, and they used to tour a couple of those mines down there, I believe. And so it was kind of a little tourist attraction for a while, and then like I said, after the Park Service took it over, they blocked off a lot of the mines just for safety.
In 1987, it was added to the National Register of Historic Places. So
okay, cool.
Kind of prevents people from tearing it down and messing with it. So if you do go, don't mess with the buildings, people.
Yeah, don't climb over the fences and go up inside of them. It's tempting. I love going in old buildings, but it's not worth getting a fine over, and it's not worth doing damage to those buildings. It's just kind of cool to have them still there, and
I just think
like I said,
22,000 people lived here at one time. It was kind of a weird time in history. It was between the Jesse James type outlaws and the gangster, type mafioso type outlaws that came, Al Capone, people like that. And so I wonder, did anybody famous ever pass through, whether it was an outlaw or a lawman or gambler or anything like that?
Or even like early politicians. You never know. You see a lot of those guys out going on adventures. I've often wondered, and I've not really looked into it very much, but I wonder if there's any cemeteries down there, right in that Rush area. You would think with that many people living down there that there would have to have been something down there like that. You can get some good historical information if there's tombstones and things like that. But yeah, it's if you've never been there, you need to go down there. I've known about the place ever since I was a kid. I grew up over Lawrence County, over in Black Rock, but I had a history teacher, and a couple of us kids who were just kind of history nerds. We were always talking to him about history, and I remember him telling us about Rush, and he says, "Yeah," I remember one time saying, "How do you take a bunch of you boys, up there to see that? We'll go up there and maybe go camp down the campground and go check out the ghost town," which we never did, but it was exciting, the thought of going to a ghost town here in Arkansas. Did you say that it was? Did you ever find out? I know you read early in the week about about Rush being supposedly only ghost town between the Mississippi River and the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, I did read something, and it was a popular website claiming that it was the only ghost town between the Mississippi River and Rocky Mountains. But I don't know how they're classifying that because there's a lot of things considered a ghost town. I don't know if they meant federally protected, but then again, there are other places on national park.
Yeah, and how far north and south you go? Because I know that there's ghost towns in Texas, and I would venture to say there's some in Kansas too. So I could be wrong though. But anyway, I know it's an unusual thing, and it's free to go see, and I just respect it when you go down there. And
you have anything else to add to Rush?
Nothing I can think of. It, like I said, I can't express how cool it is, and it's just there's a couple creeks that kind of feed the river there, and it's just a fun place to go hang out. It's a good place to take kids. There's a lot of places to wade down there and chase frogs.
It's a popular place, so if you're listening out of the area, come check it out. There's some hiking trails. There's some great canoe rental places you can rent kayaks and canoes at, and maybe take a float. Great restaurants.
And there's ghosts. There's ghosts there because it is a ghost town.
Mm-hmm.
If you can't find a ghost there, I'll give you your money back.
Yep. We'll give you a full refund.
Full refund from this webcast.
From the admission to Ghost. Or Rush. I'm sorry.
To the admission to Rush, yeah. If you don't like what you saw, you'll get your admission back.
All right, guys. I think that about wraps it up. Thank you for listening as usual, and follow us on all social medias. And
remember that Rush is not just ours; it's yourn too.
It's yourn. Spotify, YouTube, iHeartRadio, all those places. Give us a like, give us a share, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you to everyone who has tuned in to this episode of the 1836 podcast. We hope you found it informative and engaging. Please like, share, rate, and review. Leaving a good rating and review on your preferred podcast platform would also help us reach a wider audience. Be sure to tune in next time for another episode, as we continue to explore and uncover the roots and branches of Arkansas, and the fascinating history of the Ozarks.